All right. Welcome, everybody, to Dad Read This. I'm Dad, and this is.
Kaylani.
All right. And today we have a special guest on. This is Neil Hedman, an author. And today's book is this guy, Is This Really Me? And it's by Neil, and we're going to talk about his awesome book.
So this also,
Kalani,
yes.
do you want to add anything to
yes,
that? You got to be picking up on these cues, girl.
I'm sorry. My bad. I'll do better. I swear. Don't fire me.
Sorry.
This is going to say that this is the first nonfiction book we've read. This is everything else we've read has been fantasy to some extent. So this is the first book that we've read that isn't in La La Land, essentially.
Maybe it's a way to bring us out of fantasy in a sense in our own lives, but yeah.
Maybe.
And this is the first time we've had an author on.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So we're excited. We're
I feel
excited to
privileged.
have. I feel privileged to have you on. I really do. You wrote a whole damn book. not just an essay. You wrote a whole book, man.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. You wrote a book. Why?
Yeah, tell
why
us
did
about
you? Why?
it.
What? Sparked? Oh, I think I want to write a book.
Well, so, I've been a therapist for 30 years. And I've always, even before that, I wanted to write books. And so I've probably got, 20 started. And this is maybe funny, but it's true. Once I got on Adderall, I finished it.
That is how it goes. That's how it works.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Modern medicine, everyone.
You know what I just. That's awesome. You know what I just realized? We're having this conversation. My podcast, my live can't hear this conversation because it's in my headphones. So I'm gonna stop the live. That didn't make. Well, I gave it a shot.
You tried.
I'm trying different
You
things.
tried
Yeah.
and
Sorry.
failed.
So, tell me. Here's my first question: the other books that you read, were they all nonfiction? Were they all designed to be part of help people with their mental inabilities? I don't know how else to be nice about that.
All nonfiction. Yeah, I guess
really?
I'm just I'm a natural philosopher. I guess I'm just always thinking about stuff like that. And I think part of it was the timing for this book that just happened to be, a lot of the people that I'm working with, just seeing how they would just feel unsatisfied with where they were in their life and feeling almost boxed in and kind of just going through the motions. And I happen to be going through some of the same stuff, just a lot of changes in my thinking and questioning what boxes am I in and how did I get there?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So this is actually the first book you sat down. And how long did it take you to write? I mean, this is a pretty. I mean, it's not hugely robust, but it's it's a detailed book.
Yeah, and it's much more of I would say, a processing book than an informational book. So that's one difference about it. It's really to take someone through the process of kind of evaluating all the voices and I would say scripts and expectations that have been on us, to evaluate those for yourself and just say how have those steered me away from who I inherently am. And yeah, so it's funny because I have a different book that I'd been working on longer, and I just switched into this somehow. And then I just got on a roll and liked where it was going, and so I just kept going with it.
So how long? Was this a year-long process, a 2-year process?
Well, so it's funny because, so again, maybe I had seeds and portions of the context, and I had a lot of thinking that from working with patients as a therapist. But when I really sat down, it's almost like I became kind of obsessed with it. So I was staying after work in the evenings working on it, and then I would work on the weekends. And I would say, I don't know, 2 or 3 months.
That's pretty quick.
I know. I was gonna say that's not too long.
Yeah. so it's
And how many words? I mean, I don't want to be too technical, but
yeah.
how many words do you think are in this book? I mean, this is not like 100,000 words, right? This is probably
No, no,
what,
no, no, no,
50,000.
no, no. Yeah, and I'm not a good estimator. I knew it at one point, but I can't remember how many words are in it, quite honestly.
It's like a hundred
But
and
it's like 140 pages or
yeah.
120 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I know like a novel, like a good stopping point for a novel is like 100,000 words. Just
100,000.
yeah,
Yeah.
just some from other research that I've done, and
So
I
how many
know that
pages would
you're
that be?
about 300.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so
So
probably twice as long as mine, at least
yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
but it's a quick read, and it's very informative as far as like I felt like what you said earlier is very process oriented, right? Like here's step one, here's step two, and kind of stepping you through all of these processes.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this, and this I don't want to be stupid or anything, so just bear with me. Is this one of those things where like you have on the shelf and like you're talking to someone and you're like, you know what you need? You need to read my book, and then you just hand them the book kind of deal. And
Did
be
you-
like,
did you ever see What About Bob?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like what is it?
This
Baby
is the
steps.
baby
Yeah, this is
steps.
baby
Yeah.
steps. Yeah. It's
My wife
interesting.
and I
Yeah.
quote that "What About Bob" movie all the time. I'm a sailor. I sail.
Oh, I love that movie. Yeah.
I let the boat do most of the work.
Well, it is funny because I really try not to push it actually with patients. I'm very careful about that. I don't know why. I just don't want them to feel any pressure
Yeah, it's like a
to buy
boundary
it.
thing. Makes sense.
Yeah, but
I don't know. It seems like
yeah.
you're like, hey, what you're talking about is all. Listen, I done spent 2 months figuring out what your problem is, and here's the book I wrote about it.
Exactly, especially when people are going through significant life changes, or they're just like having all these questions about their life and where they are, and it's like so I can't help but say, and I'll just say, you could probably find other ones that would take you through a similar process, but this one's available too. And so, yeah, for a while I had at least the ebook up for free, but it's like still cheap right now, but yeah. So I try, but I just try to give them the option. I just do it as a suggestion, and then some people want to get it, so
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I liked like it took you through the steps, and I really liked all of like the journaling prompts and the little exercises that you had in it. Hold on, let me pull up my handy dandy notes that I
Yeah,
took.
yeah,
Okay, we'll keep talking while I look for this.
yeah.
Oh, we're all like
Hold on, it's
waiting
not
for
going
you
to
to
be. It's
give
not
us
going to
your
be
knowledge.
fast. Hold on.
Well, so in a way, if you think about it, think about how much of your life was scripted for you. Like even just all of your thinking. Like so, I think of it as a baby when we come in, to this world and we're born. We don't have like these assumptions. We're not like judging ourselves. We're not like judging anyone else. If we're sad, we cry. If we're hungry, we cry. Any of that stuff, and we don't hesitate to have bowel movements or worry about who's around. In other words, we're not questioning anything about ourselves. And I like to think of it when you look at a baby, it's like this pureness, this powerful openness to the world in their eyes. It's just like I love that. And you think of how quick it can start, even to where it could be like parents that are frustrated with you when you're a baby, when you're crying. Just the little messages that you can start to pick up, like my crying bothers somebody else.
Yeah.
You know.
One of the things I found interesting about this book was there was a lot, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talk about your authentic you, right? That's kind of the whole, I mean, if we're breaking it down, this is kind of what you're trying to get at, right? What is your authentic self? And what I find interesting is I think there's a little line between who you are authentically and who your community is, right? Like, the community that you grew up with, they define who you are. The person that I am is somewhat defined by who raised me. You know what I mean? And what my historical background is. I have great grandparents, I have grandparents, and then I have parents. All of those levels of people that stand behind me all built who I am.
You know what? I just remembered,
Right.
Dad. There was one
What?
point when I was in high school, and obviously I was in high school, so I was having a complete mental breakdown because I didn't know who I was, and I was freaking out about it. I could not keep my chill at all. I was sitting in your room sobbing, and you're like, "The fuck? What is wrong with you, Kaylani? Like, why are you freaking out?" And eventually, you're just like, "Kaylani, you're me, you're your mom, you're your grandma, you're your great grandma, you're Samoan," and you just started naming a bunch of stuff, and I was like, uh, uh, okay, I'll take it, I guess. That's something. I'll run with it.
But I think that's so. I think that's important. Who you are, who you are, is actually defined by the community that kind of brings you up. They tell you all the things that are super important in life, right? And it's up to you to kind of accept what they're telling you and figure out how to meld that into who you're growing into. So I think when you're a child, as you grow up, you kind of get these boundaries, and they, tell you not to play in the street because I don't care how authentic you are, playing in the street gets you killed, right? So don't play in the street,
Or you could
even
do it
though the street
authentically.
looks fun, right? Or you could, authentically die in the street, which I don't
That's right.
want, right? So I guess that's what I'm saying. Like I think we have to be careful about. Hey, I'm living my authentic self. Yeah, your authentic self can't get a job, right? I need you to get a job. I don't really care how authentic you are if you're not working. If I got to constantly feed you, then your authenticity doesn't matter. You need to,
I think
kind of
it kind of.
put your big girl pants on and get a job and go to
Okay, well,
work.
I
mean,
did put on my big girl pants, Dad.
I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just saying in general. In general, put your big girl panties on. Go get a job. Stop fucking around. Like, listen, I always thought it was funny. Like when I left high school, I grew up in a place where we were the poorest people in a very expensive high school. But when I was leaving high school, all these kids were going to find themselves. I'm going to go spend a year traveling in Europe and find myself. And I remember telling them, "What the hell is there to find? I need to go get a damn
I need
job."
to find food to put in my belly.
Right. All right. I need to eat. I don't know what the rest of y'all are doing, but Boule got to eat.
Yeah, so then I guess
So,
it's like
yeah.
sparsing out the difference between societal expectations for you and things that you have to do versus the authentic self, and where those kind of lines meet and blur and intertwine.
Yeah, even being defined by career, for example, is quite a Western thing, you might say. Well, maybe not even Western, I don't know, but and you think of like, what is the definition of success? You know, we could say, what's the better life? Living and having a fancy house and nice cars and all that, or living like the Native Americans did before we came along. You know what I'm saying? Like, there can be beauty in all of it, but you can see how it's almost like we are given almost the definitions of success. I even think of one of the things that's early that we're taught, even if you think of how this shapes you as a child, is Santa and being on the naughty list or the good list. I mean, even just
Right.
just that whole concept of the possibility that I might be a naughty person,
Yeah.
and that if I make some kind of mistake, I might be on this naughty list with these bad people.
Yeah. So how do you
Or you might not get all the good stuff the good kids did, right? That's one of the
Yeah,
weird things about Santa Claus is when I was we one of the things I totally stepped on Kilani again. This is a common thing that happens with me and Kilani. I always step on what she's going to say, but I just want to point out when you're growing up, what you don't realize is some Santa Clauses are poor and some Santa Clauses are rich.
yeah,
So Santa Claus might brought you some socks, but Santa Claus bought the other dude a PS3 or a
yeah.
PS4, whatever the most recent. You're like, does
Yeah.
Santa Claus not love me? What's
Well,
going on?
yeah, poor kids are automatically a little bit on the naughty list.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, poverty puts you on the naughty list, I guess.
Yeah, or they're just not as loved by Santa.
Right. No matter how authentic you are,
That's
Santa's
right.
still poor.
Well, it's even if you think of that, like I grew up quite poor, quite honestly. I mean, it's weird. Like I've seen pictures recently of the house a little bit. I mean, it was after I'd moved out our house, and then where it is now, and our house is torn down. There's this huge house. It's probably worth over $1 million where it is now, where we live. But at the time we got it, it was just my dad built it, and but
Yeah.
we grew up relatively poor. But it's even that thing about when you see other people getting these really nice things, you start to almost define yourself as someone who doesn't get those things or doesn't belong. I still even think like retirement, for example, was never a thing that was even in my thinking. My grandpa didn't retire, my dad didn't retire. It's like you just work till you can't almost. And so retirement was not even a concept for me.
Right.
It's almost like that's for other people, not for me, kind of like
Yeah.
just kind of how just even simple things like that, almost like you start to define yourself as something because of external factors in your life.
Yeah. See, Kilani, this empty space, this is the space where you're supposed to
Well,
step
you
in.
see,
When I give you the empty space, you're supposed to step in, girl. I was trying to let you
I
step
know,
in.
but I tried to step in earlier and then you stomped on me. So look at
Yeah.
where we're at
Sorry.
now. Um, no, I was just thinking about the differences, like if you accepting who you are, but still wanting to grow personally, and like what your thoughts are on that. Because one thing my dad and I were talking about in our production meeting. We've got production meetings. It's pretty fancy.
Awesome. Yeah.
Was talking about like, okay, how do you accept your authentic self, but then still have that ambition to grow as a person and not stay complacent in who you are? Because that, I think, is a huge problem. I saw this in high school, early college. I saw this huge phase of people being like, I'm going to be who I am, but then they would stop growing. They would use being their authentic self as an excuse for being a bitch, essentially. And so that's
Oh,
kind of almost weaponizing the idea of being true to who you are. But what if you are a bitch? Like,
yeah. I guess I would look
Good
at that.
point. Good point.
I would look at that though as I don't think anybody is inherently a bitch. Like none of the babies, they're not. No, they're. It's not. I don't think in us really that any of us really. That's what we want. That's where we
I don't
are.
know. When you're a kid, if someone takes your toy, you have two options. You can, you could try to snatch that toy back, or you could hit them with a truck, right? And that's baby stuff. That's just a little kid whose immediate reaction to something might be some violence, right? But that violence has to be curtailed, right?
Yeah.
You got to go, hey, in society, we don't get stuff by hitting folks with trucks.
Yeah.
We got to negotiate this out, or, you got to come with something a little lighter than a truck,
Well, I mean, I guess I think that at our core, we're naturally loving until we start to be almost like taught and trained otherwise. We start to differentiate ourselves from other people as like, how am I? Like we start to put these boxes around. But I think in a sense, and then we have these structures. You might say, look at the different religions, and then you have the political parties, and you have Cubs versus Cardinals or whatever and you get in these things and you start to define yourself almost by these things as insider, and this is what I'm like and we are like, and this is what outsiders are like and what they're like. People will even talk about, oh, the horrible fans of the Cubs or the horrible fans of the Cardinals. You know what I mean? They just almost like are defining them as the out group. But in a sense, I don't think the truth of it is, which I think is amazing if we really think of it, there's not two things alike in the whole universe, at least that I know of, have ever heard stated, that two exact things in the whole universe. No grains of sand, no galaxies, no plants, no zebras, no humans, no seasons, nothing. No two waves are the exact same. And I think if you look at our uniqueness, it's like the truth of the universe is that we all have some uniqueness, but we are part of systems that try to put us more in boxes, and we kind of
Well,
start to believe how we are.
I think with that definition of what you just said, then then the moral equation is always there, right? There's a moral equation that if everyone is different, then some people are gonna be bad and some people are gonna be good, right? That's just how it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then some of those people need to be boxed in, right?
Well,
And
quite
I
honestly,
think,
yeah.
and I think it's kind of and I think what Kilani said is right. It's kind of dangerous to go, hey, it's okay to be your authentic self if you're a bitch.
Hold on.
If you're a bitch,
I didn't. That is not.
it's not okay
That's
to be
not what I
authentic.
said.
Now he's putting words into your mouth,
Yeah,
Kayla.
hold on,
I'm sorry.
hold on. That's
That's
not
what
what
I heard.
said.
It's
I know
okay.
you heard what you wanted
Maybe
to
that's
hear.
not what you said.
I
No, that's not true. Authentically, I heard you call somebody a bitch. That's what I
Oh my
heard.
gosh, Father.
I'm just saying. That's true though. If someone's authentically, I'm a bitch, and I gotta tell them no, you're
Okay,
not.
so what?
First of all, number one, you're not a bitch. Number one, it's not cool to be a bitch, and number two, find a new authentic self. That ain't working.
Yeah, so then
You know what I'm saying?
later on in Neil's wonderful book, Dad, we learned that growth is essential and that a lot of the things that you're doing is when you're finding your authentic self is picking your values and finding what values and why you're picking the values that you're picking, which translates then to why you're engaging in the actions and behaviors that you're engaging. So yeah, if that person
All I'm saying is if someone comes up to me and says they're being their authentic self and then hollered at me and saying some shit to me, don't be surprised if you get smacked in the mouth. That's gonna be my authentic self for the minute. I'm gonna have to smack you in the mouth, and you're gonna have to correct yourself. Otherwise, your authentic self gonna get smacked a lot. I mean, that's just
Yeah. Well, what I found too is as a therapist.
yeah, as a therapist, Dad,
Most people-
qualified.
Yeah, but most people, and I didn't mean to throw it out like that as a therapist, but but it is
as
the
the
worst.
authority here.
Yeah,
I went to
exactly.
some college, y'all.
When a kid's throwing a tantrum, I saw this funny cartoon. When a kid's throwing a tantrum, a guy comes through. Everybody, look out! I'm a child therapist coming into the emergency. but in
Stand
a
back.
sense,
I have a degree.
yeah, exactly. But it's like it's to me when I see somebody who is, let's say, has a history of being violent or miserable or hard to get along with or stuff like that. Almost all of them have come from circumstances that have almost like trained them to be that way or taught them to be that way or not allowed them to be who they actually just are. And so I do not think that any of our inherent natural growth leads any of us to be bad. I think if we really were all valued for who we actually are at the core, and people respected that, I think we would all be happy and we could value the uniqueness in each other. And I think one of the start of the book is just to start to see the unique beauty in who you are, just inherently, just at your core, before all that stuff. I remember, this is just an experience that it shaped me at the time, and I think about it. But I was in kindergarten, and I was just kind of like this naive kid, and just kind of thinking like everybody's happy and whatever, and there's a bunch of us sitting around this shared table. There's like 4 or 6 of us, I can't remember. And this kid next to me, we were just all kind of goofing around for class, and he holds he puts his pencil upside down with the eraser down and the point up on the table. And he says, "I dare somebody to put their hand on here." And I just did. Like, I had no hesitation. You know what I mean? I just did. And he goes, bam. And like, I still have lead, mark in my hand from that. But in a sense, like, I was naturally trusting. Like, that's just naturally who I am.
And that dude was naturally evil. Like, that's some evil
Yeah.
shit right there. And he's 5 years
Yeah.
old.
And
His authentic self is to hurt people. I would punch that dude in the mouth. Like,
well,
come on.
again, I was more like stunned, you might say, and I was never taught to be aggressive, and I wasn't aggressive by nature, and I think that kid, I don't think he had a dad in the home for a reason. I don't know that matters for everyone, but I don't know why I did it, and I wouldn't say I have struggled with some resentment about that, but in a sense, my guess is he probably just was he. I think of him as more like ignorant too. He didn't really. He just had this thought, that and didn't really think it through,
Let
like
the
what that would
intrusive
mean to
thought
do that.
win.
Yeah, it's just almost like, oh, wouldn't that be funny? Kind of almost without really thinking like the consequences.
Yeah.
But it's like interesting how something that like that stunned, you might say, my core trusting self, where I could just trust the people around me and just be my natural self. And so there's all kinds of experiences, or if we're taught like, don't do that, you look stupid doing that, or whatever, like, somebody says something like that, it might have been something that we would inherently enjoyed, but we start to take on these beliefs like who I am is somehow not good. I got to shape myself.
Yeah, and I thought we'd talk a little bit about what does it mean to find your authentic self. Like, I think that's a great way to start. Like, who am I authentically, and how can we avoid the trap of being so authentic we cannot grow, or we pigeonhole ourselves into these weird,
Yeah.
social places that really aren't about who we are, but it's about standing in a certain place and
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, virtual signaling. I'm a good person, and because I'm a good person, I do these things, and
Performativeness.
that's who I. Yeah, performative.
Well,
That's a good.
it's
That's a
yeah.
good word,
I got a
Kilani.
degree. What can I say?
It's also interesting. I heard twice it contrasted of being your authentic self versus growth, and I don't think they're at all at odds with each other. I think we would grow better as we start to connect with ourself, because we'll grow in the ways that are actually we're built to grow and that are natural. It's not about saying I'm done growing. This is my authentic self. It means really who I am I at the core, and where did I start leaving it behind to take on, like, to please other people around me and to try to meet certain expectations. You could even say toughness. You know what I mean? Like, you might say boys are early on taught to be tough. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's this sad thing. There's this study that it's like little kids when they're hurt and crying, you know, up until age 3, the parents will pick up both of them, whether it's a boy or girl, and comfort them and all this stuff. Right around age 3, they still do that with the girl, but the boys are taught more like, shake it off, basically.
Yeah,
And it's
rub some
interesting.
dirt in it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like even just something like that, where it basically starts to tell a boy, in a sense, your emotions shouldn't be there. You shouldn't have feelings and emotions, and you shouldn't show any of your softer emotions. Or now we'll societally shame those things, and some families do that really horribly. It's to where a lot of guys they're not at all in connection with their real softer emotions, like how they really feel it. It's really there, but it's
Yeah.
stuffed down, and so it's
So
going to come out in other ways.
how does someone who feels boxed in by society, how do they start finding, their authentic self? How do you how do you break away from all of the societal pressures and go, hey, my authentic self kind of likes to art. I want to paint more, but I'm an engineer and I don't have time for all that. I got to fix things or whatever. How do you start to pull yourself away from those things and start becoming,
Yeah, and I think
the
some things are just,
creative,
yeah, some things are
creative?
just, you might say there's a part of ourselves that might want to just completely express itself, but like you said, you still got to make a living, in a sense. It doesn't,
Right.
but maybe, but so for example, if somebody loves art, but they got a degree in engineering, they might even just be able to spend a little bit more time enjoying the art that they like doing. And I think almost all of us were inherently creators and innovators, and we would all probably do that in different areas. And I think even just if you look at authors of books, like just the amazing variety that nobody's going to write the same book ever. And it's like
Right.
it's just amazing what
Even when you're
and
retelling the story someone told, it's not the same. It never sounds the same as the
yeah,
person who originally told the story. That's why telephone is so fun, because
exactly, yeah,
the
yeah,
story is so different.
yeah,
But I really liked what you said in your book, where you're like, it's the small thing. make small changes, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to upset the apple cart by changing your entire life one morning. What you want to do is you want to look at yourself and say, what brings me joy, and how can I practice that just a little today, right? And I think that's great advice. You know, my father-in-law, he loved to play the guitar, right? But he had the guitar in this case that I never seen that guitar out of that case. You know, and I remember I asked him, how come you don't ever play that thing? It's a beautiful guitar. And he was like, well, I don't really have time. You know, I'm a doctor. You know, I'm running from here to there doing all this stuff. And I thought to myself, nah, man, you gotta make that time. You know, you gotta bring that thing out and strum it a few times, you know, and remind yourself why you're doing all the doctoring stuff. You're doing all that stuff so you can enjoy the, you know, the music that's inside you. You know, like you gotta. So one of the things I thought was really great was you had all of these little steps, and you kept saying, hey, do something small, and sooner or later those small steps could lead to great steps. One of my favorite quotes is an old Chinese proverb. You know, every 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. You know, and I think that's the thing that people have to remember. You might find yourself being inauthentic in situations, and you be thinking to yourself, this is not who I am. Well, that don't mean you shut down all that. You know, what it means is you start thinking about, well, if this isn't who I am, who am I? And what can I do today that's a little different that gets me back on track to who I am? Like, you know, every now and then I do some painting, right? I'm not a good painter, but I like the process. I like seeing something that was nothing become something, right? And so I enjoy that process. And you know, once a month I try to sit down and paint something. You know, whether it's flowers or mountains or whatever, I try to express that artisticness just a little bit. You know, maybe one day I'll be a good painter, but right now everything's real abstract. You know?
Well, yeah, but even if you look at that, even that statement you made there, maybe someday I'll be a good painter. Even just automatically is devaluing something you enjoy and your new unique creation. It doesn't need a label. It doesn't need a label. Like almost like we have to be somehow a certain. I don't know, we have to become some kind of famous or a lot of people like it or whatever in order for it to be of value. And so you might say maybe somebody likes playing basketball, but they're not good at it.
Right.
So what? I would say play basketball anyway, whenever you want. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, like, and I think the other thing too is the only person who's devaluing it is me, right? No one else is saying that's a bad painting, right? It's just me, and I think what I'm looking at is the art itself, and I would like my technique to be better on these strokes, or I would like this to be better. And I know that that's not exact, you know, like I know in my heart that's the technique I'm using today is a beginner's technique, right? And in a year or two after I've done lots of paintings, that beginner technique will change to, you know, an intermediate's technique. You know, and the more I do it, and that's the other thing I think is really important is the authentic you needs practice, right? Like you can't just be authentic and you know be rude to people and then expect everyone to accept that authenticity, right? You have to practice that authenticity, that authenticness, and you have to help other people accept who you are. Like one day you can't just come up and be like, I'm this person and no one's ever seen that. And now we have to, you know, bow down to your weirdness, right? You got to kind of let people know, hey, I'm going through a change this month and I'm trying new things. And by doing that, you help everyone kind of accept the fact that you are changing a little. You know, and you're trying to be a better person.
I think that,
and I think that's important.
Yeah, but I also think that it puts a lot of pressure on what other people. It puts a lot of value in what other people are thinking about what you're doing, and I would rather just do what I want. Like, you know, like if you really feel the need to like tell them because it's important, like you value like them knowing this, like that you're going through this change, like, yeah, that's cool and great. But I feel like a part of the process could also be like, this is, I'm working on a change and I don't have to care what they think anymore. You know, I don't have to care that I'm doing this for me. I'm becoming a better person for me and not for them.
Yeah.
Right, and I agree with that, but I also agree that you have working relationships,
Yes.
and you what you don't want is you don't want to come off as someone who is, constantly in flux, and now I have to tiptoe around you because we can't live in that kind of society either, right? But we can live in a society where we know and we care about you enough to know you're trying something new. You're making changes in your life. And most people will accept that. Hey, I'm trying this new thing. I'm trying to turn my life to a better me. And most people will be like, yeah, you need to be a better you, and I'm going to support that. But if you come out of the blue with, I'm painting now, and everything I do is paint and art, and people are going to be like, what the hell's wrong with this
I don't
person?
think that's true. I
Like,
did that last month and everyone said, good job, Kaylani. And I said, yeah.
I guess that's why I haven't seen any of your art.
Well, but isn't that interesting? That's also interesting that you were talking almost there about what was reinforced or not reinforced, like in a sense about whether somebody wants to paint and then what other people's reaction are to if you paint. The thing is, I don't think there. We don't want to get like our authentic self mixed up with somebody who was just going to go being nasty to people, because quite honestly, I don't think that's who we inherently are, what we're inherently like. And I would say that's also a morality issue. Like, I don't think anybody's entitled to go around hurting or taking from others. I like this concept of, or I like to say that the only legitimate moralities would have to come from either a supreme being or collective humanity. And wherever those are, they pretty much overlap. You know, most people know we can't go around killing each other. We can't go taking people's stuff, all that stuff. You can't just
Right.
punch somebody or whatever. So it's kind of like it's that stuff is hurting others. I think our as we value who we really are, it becomes also easier to allow other people to be who they are. And I think a big part of our maybe sickness as society is the shame that all of us have felt to different degrees because we were told somehow we need to change, or the who we are is not good, or we've got that impression that we're not enough, instead of like really growing who we are and sharing it and being proud of it. And I think sometimes we just learn to shut that down so that we'll get the approval. We learn very early what to do and not to do for approval, and that can be like just what neighborhood you happen to grow up in, about whether you know some of your natural expressions were valued or called stupid. And I think the more, I think a lot of our sicknesses come from not being valued just from the beginning. And I think a lot of times we just got to start with seeing that goodness and uniqueness and allowing that space so that we can feel like I'm naturally expressing myself in the universe. Like who I am is very unique, and I want to do things that bring me joy and where I feel like I can be good. And it's okay if some people don't like it. We don't. Everybody doesn't have to like it. We don't need to everybody to like how we are. I think it's respect. I think that respect each other. That stuff that's important for any society.
Right. Right.
This is gonna sound super off topic, but it's not, I swear. Have you guys seen the movie K-pop Demon Hunters?
I haven't.
You know what? That came up on my, watch it or whatever on my watch
Yes,
it list.
yes, it did. I put it there.
And I have not.
Yes,
you
I
really?
did.
I don't know how you do that, but anyway, tell me what is the correlation?
So,
here?
K-pop Demon Hunters is about this girl K-pop band who is trying to keep all of the demons away, and demons it's a analogy for shame. And so the whole movie is about learning how to like accept yourself and the goodness that comes from accepting yourself, and also like growing together as a family and stuff. But I mean, it's top-notch stuff. It's it's peak like children's television. So
Oh, is it like
It's it's animated.
yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
an
Yeah, it's an
animated movie.
animated
It's kind
show.
of like it's not anime, but it's animated. It has I don't know, it's just so good. It's so good. I watched it 4 times this week.
I
Like,
try not to watch anything with K-pop thanks to
well,
older.
it's
So
not
that's
don't let it's not super K-poppy. It's just
okay.
stylistically, and it's there's some influences of Korean history and stuff in there. Just little sprinkles here and there. But anyway, the whole thing is, when you're accepting yourself, you can create a new shield from the demons. And also, are the demons that bad? Maybe the demons just need some love. Maybe those demons aren't being valued for who they are. Those demons just need a hug. I
That's
believe
right.
that.
The demons just need a
The
hug.
demons
That's
just need
right.
a hug.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a great movie. I'd highly recommend it.
Can't hug demons away.
Yes, you can,
You
Dad.
can't you can't hug
Well, I
demons away.
hugged you,
All
didn't I?
right. What what is this is exactly what we're talking about. You're not accepting my authentic
No,
self,
I
Karate.
am. I just gave it a name.
Um
That's all. Demon.
nice. You got a chapter in here about the masks we wear.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that in that there are some masks that we wear because of like society, right? And who we're trying to be. And I thought that was interesting because I think that some masks, I think most people have several masks they wear, right? I got a mask that I wear for my family, right? When I'm around my family, I act this way because if I don't act this way, I'm going to have some crazy reactions. When I go to church, I have this other mask that I wear is church specific. I change my language. I change the way I talk to people. When I'm at work, I got a different mask because this is a work mask. And now, because I wear those masks, does that mean I'm less authentic, or how does that play into it? I know I'm aware of the masks, and I put them on specifically so that I can function in society, right? I want to function in society where people will, interact with me well, and I'll interact with, people well. But don't you think that sometimes we have to wear masks in order to like be a good society?
Well, I think one of the things too is we might confuse their like masks, which I look at more as a form of identity or a puppet that we try to play versus like behavior. So you can change your behavior. Yeah, you might act different around different people, partly because it's almost out of respect for them and that environment.
Right.
You want to get along with them and you don't want to offend them. And there might be times when we feel like I want to curtail my behavior, but you might say like, well, why should I have to, if to accommodate you? We could also look at that thing, but the masks really a lot more. It's almost like the personas that we put on. It's almost like, I could be the tough guy, or I could be the silent one, and maybe we're not. Maybe we don't always want to be silent, or I'm the professional, or even you could say doctor or therapist. It's even just a. It's almost like it's not really who we are. They're just things that we do, you know
Right.
and so part of it I think is when we're trying to, it's almost like, what is a doctor? You could say, well, does a doctor have to act a certain way exactly? I mean, there's certain ethics and stuff that you do, but in a sense, like, I would say each person's beautiful self, their real inherentness of their uniqueness, could make a unique doctor that would bring about certain good things and help certain people that someone else maybe wouldn't be able to. And so almost like just finding ways where we can let, like I joke around a lot. Like that's just something I've always done. That's like, I come from many generations of people who joke around. But so in therapy though, I know to curtail it with certain people, but I think that my use of humor in therapy is a good thing. A lot of people really appreciate that. And I think it's something that I bring just just however that got there, I enjoy laughter. You know what I mean? And so I like to include it there. And so there might be people that don't really appreciate that, and it might be better for them to find a different therapist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, because maybe you'll find one that is not funny, right?
Yeah.
And one that one that is
Yeah, if you want
more
one that's not funny, you got to go somewhere else, okay?
right. Well, you want someone who's going to be
Because I
stoic.
am
That's
loaded
not
with humor.
right. Well, we don't know about that, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
At least I like my humor.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and I want to say that I don't think you're inauthentic if you do that. If you put on a persona to do something, right? If I put on this persona to do my job, that's not authentically me. That's why you're like when you see a teacher that is your teacher all your life or whatever during the day, and then you see him out at the store, you're always like, the teacher goes to the store. First of all, you're like weird by that, but then you realize, no, these people are just human beings,
Yeah.
and who they are at work has nothing to do with who they are at home, right? Like, I would imagine people who I work with, who I kind of, I have to be stern with, they would be surprised that I'm a very loving, gentle father, right, Kelani?
I would be surprised.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Wait, Dad, you're loving and gentle? When did that happen?
Like, hold on, did I
Yeah,
blink
so
during that part of my childhood?
You were, out of all my children, you were the one I was most gentle with. The rest of them, I was like, hey, get your shit in
Well,
gear.
hey. Yep. I,
See? And you didn't even know. Apparently, I didn't wear that mask strong. Let's
some
see.
other things.
But I think, just about like, there is no, I mean, there's ethics and there's boundaries and stuff with being a teacher. But I think as teachers learn to like, I don't have to maybe set it up the way I was, my room doesn't have to look exactly all orderly the way it was with some people. I like to see when teachers say like, I want to make my classroom unique for these kids. And the way they do that, they would do it if they just let themselves do it. And again, you follow ethics and respect for other people, but they would do it in their own beautiful way.
Yeah.
I
I think that the biggest thing is that you can find pieces of yourself regardless of what you're doing. I mean, so Neil, I don't know if you knew this, but I'm a BCBA. I'm a behavior analyst. I work with kids with
Oh, yeah,
autism
yeah.
and stuff
Okay.
like that. So,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time working with their parents. And obviously, like, there's a professional mask that goes on, but I'm still me. I just might not, spill my life story to them, but like you, I'm still joking around with them, and I'm, feeling out who they
Yeah.
are as I parse through what they need to get done to help their kid. But you can be you and still have that persona at the same time. This is
Yeah.
this
And
and
I think
this.
when we're new, yeah, and I think sometimes when we're newer at something, for example, like I remember starting as a therapist. It's almost like you're acting much more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're acting what you think a therapist is kind of like, or what you've been taught in a sense, but really you can be therapeutic as yourself in your own unique ways. And the more you learn to just kind of express that and be yourself in that process, still, again, following ethics and using the knowledge and stuff, the techniques and learning and experience that you have. Yeah, that's great. And I think it just helps over time. I've learned to allow myself to be who I am as a person more in my work too, you know, and not, I feel less like I have to be concerned with how people see me or how I should be acting as a therapist, because it's okay. I'm not, as long as I'm following, good conduct and I'm not doing harm to anybody, it's okay for me to be who I am. It's just how I like to do stuff. It's how I like to approach
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, and I think what happens is when we fall back on what we think is the right thing, right? Maybe, and that may not be the authenticness of us, but it's what we understand that the group does. And it's only when we become comfortable in our place that we can truly be authentic, right? So
I just
What are
I
we
just think you're
snapping
getting
now?
it. I
What
think
happened?
it's clicking, Dad.
Well, I got it before.
Oh, okay.
I got
Well,
it before. I understood the whole process
Okay, I'm
before.
sorry. It didn't. It didn't
But
seem like
I'm
you had
saying
it for a minute. You were saying some things. I'm like, I think that's
No,
the
I mean-
opposite of what we just said. Like,
No, but I do think I think that the more comfortable you are in your situation, the more authentic you can be. Like the first day you're counseling people, you're not coming with the jazzy hands and all the jokes. You're trying to find your place. And so you have to use the boundaries that are in place to help you find your place. And then once you find your place, then you're like, hey, man, how's that depression coming? Or whatever the situation is,
Yeah.
like but you have to find where you're comfortable. As a manager of people, that's something you have to do as well. Like you got to find, okay, this is what the company wants for me. I got to figure out how to be professional and still be myself, still laugh, still bring joy to what I'm doing, right? And you can't do that when you're constantly thinking about, do I fit? You have to accept the fact that, you fitting is, I feel like you fitting is part two. Part one is understanding where you're at, what the job is, being comfortable, and then you can go, here's how I fit. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll give you an example, like, because you might say, how are we supposed to interact with strangers in society, or should you approach strangers or, act familiar with them or whatever. You might say everybody's taught maybe to have to handle it a certain way. And I went to a national motocross race over the weekend with my son Jacob, and so he would never have done this, and he would have been horrified. So, but in a sense, so I was just waiting for him somewhere, and I see this guy that's like walks by, and he's got this cut off shirt, and he's just got this really great build, like he was just like built, like he just looked solid, right, and kind of maybe intimidating kind of guy, but whatever. And so I questioned it, but it's just my nature. I just like to do stuff like this. So I go up to him, and I was like kind of close to him, and I said, "You look like a punk ass little bitch." and I think he just he caught him off guard, and he's like smiled, and I said, "No, for real. I think you look great. Like you got such a great build. You know what I mean? I wish I had a build like that." And it was good. It was all turned out fine. You know what I mean? But most people would never approach something like that, and it's just sometimes I like to approach stuff like that. You know what I mean?
It's the shock value of the moment, right?
Yeah,
it's
but
so
it was like
shocking that someone would say that to him.
But I think he quickly knew. I think he quickly got the feel of that. I have no animosity towards him. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I 100% agree. Most people can't pull that off, right? Most people can't pull that off. But what you can pull off is a genuineness with people, and that is, I think, what happened there. They know that they can sense that you're a joker. Like, one of the things I was like when Nick was younger, when my oldest son was younger, one of the things I would try to do is I would try to get into conversations with complete strangers so that he would be comfortable talking to people out in public. Yeah. And so, that was one of the things you're trying to, how do you do that? And one of the things that you do is you just open up your mouth and say whatever you're thinking, and then let the chips fall where they are. And some people, they'll look at you crazy and walk away, and that's okay. Like I would tell them, it's okay that they don't like talking. That's fine.
Yeah, but if I had asked my wife or my son, probably any of my kids, if I should have done that, they all would have said no. But what it really was,
I'm going to tell you, I would have said no. Right now, I'm like, that's a bad idea.
I knew I was taking a bit of a risk there, but it's interesting because what it really was, I wanted to tell this guy who I can imagine would appreciate it. You look really good, because somebody who had done, you could tell has done a lot of work, spent a lot of time, and just to say, you look great. That's really what it was. It was a way to express, like, as a person, I appreciate this guy's build. He looks great, and I just want to tell him that. And that was kind of just a way to approach it. And I think if I would have held back out of, I don't know, like, how's he going to react, or that stuff, then I wouldn't have shared that with that part of myself with him, you know.
For
Right.
sure, yeah.
I got some things I wrote down, and I think this is really important what you put here. Like, feedback is simply information, not a reflection of your work. You have the power to decide what to take in and what to release, and how to remain grounded in who you are. I think that's super important for people who are transitioning or trying to change their persona or change, how they are viewed. Is to go, okay, yeah, don't take everything to heart.
Yeah.
Take the information that is important and valuable. Take that and leave all the criticism and all the weird sounding things that people say while they're talking to you, and all the hurtful things is probably a better way to say it, and put that away. Like, I would say I know people who can't do that.
Yeah.
Who they hear one thing, and now they can't talk to that person ever again, or they're not going to converse with that person for another 6 months because that person said something offensive, and they're like, well, why don't you get offended? And I go, well, that's our crazy auntie. Like, she's always saying crazy stuff. Like, you just got to take that with a grain of salt. Like, just, it's okay that she's crazy. Know that it comes from a place of love. Like, whatever she's telling you, she's trying to come from a place of love. Now, some of the shit she says, I ain't never gonna do. You know what I mean? But I nodded, yes, auntie, yes, okay, and then I move on with my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't take it too granted.
Well, I think a lot of us too, we're not taught that. We're not taught that feedback from our environment is not. We don't have to take it all and to let it go to our heart. You might say, as a child, you could say, ideal. For example, let's say I use this example, but let's say a child who's got these meth addicted parents, and they're making meth in the house, and this little 5-year-old is like, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm hungry." Comes out of their room, and they say, "Quit, you be a little selfish brat, quit complaining, get back in your room." Now, that's an extreme case, but in a sense, that child doesn't know to say that I'm not a problem. The child doesn't know.
Right.
It just gets that feedback from their environment, and they start thinking of themselves as an annoying child, or my needs don't matter and I shouldn't speak up about my needs. And so if you say, just in all kinds of ways, all kinds of messages are immediately, our environment is starting to shape us and tell us, don't be this, do be this, don't be this, do be this. And it's like, if we don't get to a point where we can say, how do I want to be? Like, what do I want to be like?
Yeah.
I was looking through
I also like this other one.
My
Go
Turn,
ahead.
Dad. I was looking through your references because I'm a nerd, and I was seeing a lot of your references were CBT based. I was wondering, because I did a lot of stuff with like CBT and DBT. I did a lot of research on that, but I eventually found ACT. Have you ever done ACT work?
Is that acceptance and commitment therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been trained in it, but yeah.
I found a lot of stuff on that, and I get the occasional client who's highly verbal that benefits a lot from that, and who benefits from picking their values. And you know what? Like, these are kids, and a lot of times they're like, I value playing video games, and I'm like, fuck yeah. How are we gonna get there? Let's find a way to play some video games. But then, like, you can't punch people, kids. So if you do that, like teaching, like within the environment, okay, we're gonna be committed in our actions, and our actions are either gonna take us to video games or they're gonna take us away from video games, and like really leaning into that with them. And I found that that's a super helpful approach. Dad, I think you would really like it. I think you would appreciate the structure of it all. I like a good structure. It's got a hexaflex.
Right.
That's what it's called.
Hexaflex.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fun to say.
I like
Yeah.
this other quote. Release the beliefs that you need to earn joy. Right? I really like that. I think that's so true. Like, you gotta, there is no earning joy, and I think sometimes we forget that, and I think you're right what you said earlier in the podcast. Like, sometimes we we feel unworthy for whatever our situation is. I think they call that imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm,
We
mm-hmm.
live in that. We live
Yeah.
in a world where we feel like, oh, I'm an imposter in this situation, and I think it's really important for people to go, for all of us to go, hey, you're not an imposter. You're here for a reason. Like you've made it here because you did the work, because you've read the research, you've done whatever it is that got you here. You got here on your own, and accept that. Now, of course, you're uncomfortable with that position at the beginning, just like we were talking about earlier. You're uncomfortable with it, so you fall back on what you think until you learn, and then you grow. So I think it's really important for people to get out of the idea that you know joy is earned. That
Yeah.
the other thing I remember is this concept of I'm going to be happy when I have $1 million,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to be happy when I get the manager job, or I'm going to be happy when I'm finally this thing. Well,
Yeah.
that never pans out, right?
Yeah.
That joy never pans out because you're always chasing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you sit in who you are, you can sit in that joy. I guess you would say, once you sit in your authentic self, you can accept the joy that comes with being that person, right?
Yeah, I think if you even think about that, most of even we're taught what joy is or where it should come from. We could say, like, again, financial success or career or good at sports or athleticism, or almost like you can have joy when you do these things or when you reach this point. And it's not, I think joy is a natural occurrence when we love ourselves and just love who we naturally are and really start to give ourselves room to just say, well, what is it that I like, and where do I tend to flourish, and what kinds of things have I been doing that don't really serve me? I've just been doing them because that's what everybody else thought I should do, or it, so I think the more we can just value ourselves and love ourselves and try to find where it's almost like finding the parts of the environment that resonate most with our unique self, you might say, and that's going to be a different combination for everybody.
Well, this has been a great conversation with Neil Hedman, PhD, who and author of this book, Is This Really Me? This is really me. That's
That's
really Jelani.
right.
That's really Neil. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this book if you find yourself struggling with feelings of worthiness, or if you find yourself struggling with do I belong or imposter syndrome. I think this is a great book to kind of help you understand and to give you some real valid practical steps. Don't think you got to boil the ocean. Take one cup at a time, and things will work out. I want to thank Neil for being on our podcast. Dad, read this. This is Dad, and this is
Kaylani. And
Thanks, guys.
and
we'll see you on the next chapter.